kind of informal practice hardens into a formalised structure. It's a hardening of the arteries, the arteries that take the blood around the body, and so there is no guarantee against it. I mean, there are anarchists, or have been anarchists, who postulate a kind of anarchist utopia, which one day we will arrive at. One morning the revolution will come and everything will change and history will stop. But of course history doesn't stop and nothing is finished. So there is a lot to be said for the notion of permanent revolution in that sense.
How would anarchists proceed in order to rethink the welfare state as a really social mechanism facing collective needs and producing collective goods?
Well, in terms of the welfare state, very often an argument against anarchism is people say, but you anarchists are crazy because the state is not always this terrifying organisation, it's the way we organise for social welfare. Now the answer is, I think, that every human society organises for social welfare. You see it in the English history, certainly in the early 19th century, every kind of friendly society, as they were called, and mutual aid organisation. It was exactly the same in the 19th century in Italy, or at least in northern Italy. There were every kind of mutual aid organisation. When they harden into a bureaucracy organised by the state, then very often they have to be reinvented. But anarchism postulates a welfare society rather than a welfare state.
Would a huge and systematic extension of bottom-up approaches be possible in those fields which have been traditionally top-down, like urban planning?
Yes, I do, and it depends on the willingness of people to demand it. But that we do get examples of a bottom-up approach to urban planning. In practice, of course, the key to urban planning really has to do with the key to land ownership and control of land. And when you have private property in land, and land is held as a speculative commodity, then obviously the people who own it are going to exercise over much control in the debate about planning.
A very controversial issue that used to create divisions inside antagonistic movements is the total or partial rejection of violence. What is your thought on violent and non-violent ways of protest?
Well, I'm not a violent person, and so I have a dislike of violence. Certainly I have met people, including anarchists, who romanticise violence, whereas we all know if you ever see any violence is ugly and brutal, and its consequences are unpleasant. But anarchists are not necessarily pacifists. They don't follow Jesus in saying turn the other cheek. And, so violence is necessary, and it's necessary to resist other people's violence. Violence always rebuffs against the people who employ it. It always hits back. It's never a good policy. It's maybe an unpleasant necessity.
Most people think that anarchist perspective requires ignoring the state. In your opinion, what role should radicals and anarchists play within our highly institutionalized society?
Well, on this first point about ignoring the state, most anarchists don't ignore the state. I mean, I consider myself an anarchist, but I pay taxes, at least if I earn enough money to pay taxes to go down today. But I have a friend, for example, the English anarchist Vernon Richards, whose income was as low as mine, but who loved to fill in his income tax form and demanded that the inspector should come and see him, and he would argue with the inspector and proposed that the inspector joins him in a debate on the principles of taxation. Of course, the poor man, this poor minor civil servant, is just anxious to get the form filled up and go away. But the same anarchist said to me that he thought that the kind of person who defrauds his income tax, he tells lies on the income tax form, is not the kind of person who will be useful in an anarchist society. He thought that, in other words, and there is an old slogan, honesty is the best policy. But I've already forgotten where this question was ending.
Yeah, the question was
the question of ignoring the state. No, of course we can't ignore the state, but then we can evolve alternatives to the state.